may not need, I hold things and run my laptop at the same time. Welcome everybody. Feel free to eat lunch while we're getting things going here. Welcome to Financing Projects, Resources, Capital Campaigns, and Fundraising. This is a panel discussion, obviously, of the challenges and opportunities for funding your next capital project. I'm Phil Summers. I'm the Executive Director of the Addison County Chamber of Commerce, and I'm really excited to serve as your moderator here this morning. This event is the latest installment in the Addison County Chamber of Commerce and the Addison County Economic Development Corporation's annual business education series, which is made possible through a generous sponsorship of the Community Bank. We've got to give our sponsors love. We also want to thank the Grapevine Grill for bringing in lunch today. Before I introduce our panel, just a couple of housekeeping things. Today's event will include a moderated discussion followed by an audience Q&A. So I'm going to ask you to hold your questions until that portion. Video of today's program is going to be available online at addisoncounty.com and addisoncountyedc.org. And we have some printed handouts and information on specific projects and organizations that are being discussed here today. Finally, just do me a favor, mute your phones. I forgot to mute mine, so if it goes off, I'll be really embarrassed. So now I'd like to introduce our panel. Just bear with me here. Dana Hart is the director of the Middlebury Public Library here, a position she's held since 2018. Dana has previously held positions at the New York Public Library and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. She currently serves as a visiting instructor at Middlebury College and is past president of the Vermont Libraries Association Public Libraries Section. Welcome, Dana. Lisa, who's sitting right here next to me, and before I forget, Lisa, thank you for making this available to us today. We really appreciate it. Lisa is the executive and artistic director here at Town Hall Theater, a position she's held since February of 2020. She is the co-founder of the Middlebury Underground and the annual Foodaroo Food and Arts Festival, which we just had here recently, and represents Addison and Rutland counties for the Vermont Arts Council's Creative Network. Lisa holds degrees in art history and English literature from Harvard University. Welcome, Lisa. Susan Schaefer is the treasurer of the Friends of the Vergennes Opera House and has been a member of the all-volunteer board of directors since 2013. Susan retired in 2012 as managing director at Deloitte, based in New York. While managing global strategy and governance projects, she served as secretary to the Deloitte Global Board of Directors and head of the Global Secretariat. Susan resides in New Haven and enjoys an active life of volunteer work, local community activities, travel, family, and sports. Welcome, Susan. Hope you saw that Bills game last night. Gerianne Smart is a marketing and communications professional who currently serves as president at the all-volunteer Friends of Vergennes Opera House. Gerianne first served as president of the Opera House from '94 to 2001 before returning to the post in June of 2013. Currently, she is the marketing and public relations manager at Rutland Regional Medical Center, a position she's held for the past 10 years. She also manages her consulting firm, Smart Communications. Welcome, Jerry. Yeah. Alex Armani-Munn is the executive director of the Addison County Economic Development Corporation, a position he assumed just this February. He has worked in community and economic development since 2014, holding positions in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. He holds a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Northern Colorado and a master's degree in political science from the University of Colorado. Go Buffaloes, welcome. Okay. Now we get to some questions. Of course, I just messed this up again. Bear with me. I would have done this on paper, but my eyes aren't what they used to be. Okay, so the panelists today were specifically selected because each of them has recently planned and managed large-scale capital projects, some finished and some unfinished. So to begin today's discussion, I'm going to ask each panelist to provide a brief overview of their respective projects, and we're going to begin with Dana.
Okay, hi everyone. Just let me know if I'm not speaking close enough to the mic or if you can't hear me. So the Ilsley Public Library project is a major renovation and expansion of our existing building. It has been in the works in some form or fashion for almost 20 years now. So in the early 2000s, the library trustees started to feel that we really needed more space. We had outgrown the existing spaces. And at the same time, we started to have a whole lot of facilities issues that we're going to need pretty major investment to repair. So there have been multiple attempts over the past decade to try and get this project off the ground. About 5 years ago, the trustees really started pursuing it again in earnest, working with the town of Middlebury. And ultimately were able to develop a plan that the community was on board with, a design that the community was really excited about, and that allowed us to pass a bond and do some fundraising. So we are now in the middle of construction. We're increasing our space by roughly a third right on Main Street. I'm sure many of you have seen it. And we are projecting that we'll finish up in the summer of 2026 and hopefully move back in August or September of 2026.
Great, thank you. Lisa, how about you?
Sure. So the expansion of Town Hall Theater started before I got here. There were conversations about how we were bursting at the seams, we needed more space. And in 2018, actually prior to that, there was a group called the Space Cadets that was tasked with searching for space all across the county. And it wasn't until the diner property next door came up for sale that we finally found a spot that really felt like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our expansion. And the board quickly fundraised and snapped it up in 2018. And then after that, when I got here in the pandemic in 2021, we really started working on our design plans with the idea of expansion and it started in a place of what are the things that Town Hall Theater needs, and it quickly turned to a conversation of what can we be doing to better serve this region. And what developed in our plans were a dedicated education space, a small performance space that doubles as an event rental space, a scene shop, and just some other things that help our operations. And so we didn't really start our kind of kitchen table conversations about this project until 2022, and that was our feasibility study, where we just brought our kind of raw blueprints and just got a sense of what people thought about it. And then in 23, we started actively fundraising. We broke ground in December 2023, and we're fundraising right up until the very end, and we had our opening in June. And I'm happy to give people tours after this as well. So it's a quick overview.
Thanks. Susan and Gerianne.
Okay, the Vergennes, is this on? Is this mic on? Vergennes Opera House All Access Project is all about accessibility for the second floor Opera House space, but also for the ground floor City Hall offices in Vergennes. But we expanded that idea to make sure that the dressing room and the stage were also accessible. So we started this project, we started having a conversation in our strategic plan, our 2020 strategic plan through 2025. It was on there to make it accessible. COVID happened. Susan said, well, what else are we doing? Let's do this thing, basically. So we started pretty in earnest, I would say, in early 2022 to move this project forward. It started out as a great idea at 1.6 million, and then in 2023-ish, 24, we found out it's closer to 1.9 million, and then just last week, it's now sitting at about 2.2 million. So we started the project, and we broke ground on it this year, and we've had some wonderful surprises. We'll probably get into that later. Just one of the things to think about when you're doing the project is the surprise part. But we started, and our goal is to have it opened, accessible by March, end of March, or beginning of March, town meeting day. That would be a remarkable thing. But it won't look so good downstairs. You can still get to the elevator tower, but it probably won't look that pretty. That'll be finished. The whole alleyway, courtyard portion will be finished in probably May is when we'll have a ribbon cutting for that. And that's where we are now.
Thanks, Gerianne. Alex?
Yeah, thank you, Phil. So I'll be somewhat of the anomaly on the panel today. There we go. So rather than speaking to one project specifically, today I'll really be speaking to the network of support services that exist here in Addison County to help folks taking on a large capital project. So that really represents Addison County EDC as well as our partners like the Better Middlebury Partnership and the Chamber, and just letting folks know all of the resources at their disposal as they begin to plan for their project and seek funding. However, I do want to mention one project specifically that we are currently working on that I would likely refer to throughout the panel discussion today, and that is pre-development engineering at the Middlebury Industrial Park, specifically Phase 2 and Phase 3 areas. This is a project that we were able to leverage MBRC grant funding for in partnership with Middlebury College and the town of Middlebury that will see the completion of pre-development engineering for really comprehensive infrastructure at the Phase 2 and Phase 3 areas of the industrial park. Once that engineering is complete, we'll be able to go after additional grant funding to construct that infrastructure, and then from there, work again with our partners at the town and the college to market that property for commercial and industrial development. So I'll get more into detail on that project throughout the talk today, but I really do think it represents the challenges and opportunities in the life cycle of a grant in great ways. So expect to hear more on that.
Great, thanks, Alex. So I thought what I'd do now is I'm going to ask a question and ask each of you in turn to answer, and then we'll start to go from left to right. So we'll start with you, Lisa. The question is, what were the various funding sources used by your project, and what was the process like for building your capital stack?
Sure. So it started with one of those kitchen table conversations and a $500,000 gift to seed our campaign. And then other sort of major pieces of funding were a $1 million gift from Middlebury College, about $1 million in grants and local business and community organization support. A huge part of that was a $500,000 community revitalization, I forget, it's an economic development grant, the state, called the CRRP, and as well as some others. And then overwhelmingly individuals who stepped up at every single level you could possibly imagine to support this project, from buying a brick to sending in, a $5 sustaining membership or whatever, to six-figure gifts, really all over the map, and just incredible support with that. And then the other quick thing I want to say that I found really valuable in fundraising, we had a video made that was a 3D fly-through with our story told in just a couple of minutes, and that was our most effective fundraising tool. We had a model as well, and we talked about it in our curtain speeches, and we have a one-pager that's dated but sitting on the counter out there that you're welcome to look at. And we did a presentation, but we didn't have a case statement. We decided to sort of distill the information differently.
Thanks. Dana?
So, because the library is a department of the town of Middlebury, we knew from the beginning that the town would have to take out a bond, have a bond vote to finance the project. The question kind of became, how much would Middlebury taxpayers be willing to pay back through their property taxes? So what portion of the bond would be favorable, seen as favorable to the taxpayers to be paid back through property taxes? We knew we were going to need a mix of private and grant funding to make it palatable to the voters. What we ended up with is about $500,000 in federal rebates, which we'll get after the project, and that's for our geothermal system. $4.5 million coming from property taxes over the life of the bond. $5.5 million coming from the local option tax, again, to be paid back over the life of the bond. And then $6.5 million from the capital campaign from private donations. Notably absent, obviously, is any amount of grant funding. We had hoped to get close to $2 million in grants, and none of our grant applications have been successful. So that difference was made up for with increases to our capital campaign goal and our the amount we pay back through the local option tax.
Thanks, Dan.
So I'll start by speaking to Middlebury Industrial Park project. So again, one of the things I get most excited about with this project was it gave us the opportunity at ACDC to take a $25,000 grant from the Northern Border Regional Commission and to leverage that money to pay for a scope of work that's significantly larger than the grant we were awarded. And what's great about this is it really represents one of the most critical aspects I think any funding agency looks for in a grant application, and that's how could you stretch the dollars that they're infusing in that project. So as I mentioned, we partnered with the town of Middlebury as well as the college as the property owner at the industrial park, and now are able to pay for this scope of work that I think any one of us alone would not have been able to afford ourselves. So it really, I think, speaks to the value of partnerships as well when you are really trying to determine how to fund your project. The other thing that I'm excited to share with this, and it is public record, so I don't mind sharing this, but the town of Middlebury specifically was able to put $50,000 in public funds in action that had been left over in an economic development account for close to a decade. And this was money that had originally been allocated for business development services in Middlebury. And when that position was eliminated, that money basically became stagnant. So when you have those public funds, the worst thing that can happen is for them to sit there doing nothing. So we're really, really excited to be able to provide that opportunity to infuse that money back into development here in Middlebury. So the other thing I'll mention, Dana mentioned the unfortunate outcome of not being able to get any grant money. And unfortunately, in the competitive environment we're in now, that tends to happen a lot. But I always encourage folks, when you're planning funding for your project, specifically with grants, there's no panacea for grant funding. You're never going to find all your funding from one grant program, and more often than not, funding agency, nobody wants to be the first dollar in, everybody wants to be the last dollar in. So you'll often run into a chicken before the egg type situation where every grant you apply to tells you, well, we really just fill the gap. But when the gap is 100% of your budget, who's the first one to come in? So the last thing I'll say about that, again, something we run into a lot, assisting municipalities and nonprofits in the grant process, is really explore all the different grant sources that exist and really ask yourself how you may be able to leverage matching funds or funds from a partner, a private partner, to really prime the pump, if you will, to start bringing in those grant dollars to really build that capital stack from diverse sources. And that's probably a great segue into Vergennes Opera House, because you have quite the capital stack.
And I will give this to our treasurer. Treasurer is amazing, Sue.
Well, I feel pretty good because we got some great grants. About $1.5 million of our project is grant funded. But we did have the experience of who's going to be first. And we were writing grant applications morning, noon, and night. I had a spreadsheet with, 15 pages of possibilities, and we applied for them all. But it was, as Alex said, they wanted to know we had funding before they would give us funding. So it was that initial who's going to be first, and we were fortunate that the federal government was first in. We got $500,000 in congressional directed spending, thanks to our Senator Sanders, and then from there things started to roll. We had several grants from the state, and they are, I won't say easy to get. The grant applications are long and very detailed, but so far, and we haven't lost any. We had some panic a few months ago when things started to be clawed back, but so far we're still standing. And I would also say we did a lot of initial networking. We called on our representatives, all the agencies we thought would be helpful in the state, our local supported development agencies, planning commissions, our lenders. we bent their ear about and found them, everybody very helpful with advice. And that's, we put together, in addition to the grants, of course, local campaign. We got our very first seed money from an event called the Ladies Rally, which we just had one yesterday, which was quite successful. And it builds momentum. Our donors and like to build on others. We leverage each other. And yesterday we had an amazing event that just, people were buying things at auction, anything we could think of to inspire them to open their checkbooks, and they did. So we consider ourselves pretty fortunate.
Okay, thanks. Next question. So, a few of you touched on some of this, but what were some of the challenges? So you got your funding, and you're starting to execute your plan. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in that process?
Our biggest challenge was actually that our funding target kept moving. It was like the finish line kept moving. So in 2021, when we first started talking about the project, it was $5.5 million, then it was 6.5, then we signed a contract around 7.5 after having looked at a different plan that was over 10 million and clawing back, really reining in what we were doing, making some different choices. And ultimately it cost 8.5. So, it was just every time we thought we were done, we weren't. And then that, not only took a lot of energy, but also just continuing to re-strategize our fundraising approach and how we were going about things. And then other than that, I would say, change orders are my least favorite 2 words in the English language. And of course, we had some surprises like every construction project has, and that also drove up the cost a bit.
Thanks. Is it Dana?
Yeah, I could just say ditto. I'm like, we're a year behind where Town Hall Theater was in their process, so I'm just starting to learn the pain of the change order and the discovery during construction when you find out that, there were unforeseen conditions. For us, it's that we now need to replace our historic roof, which initially we had thought we could just sort of patch. Turns out it's in worse shape than we thought. So I've been surprised at how our project contingency, which seemed so vast to me when we set it at around $500,000, how quickly that kind of gets eaten up with surprises. I couldn't really conceive of what these surprises might be because I've never been through a major capital project before. So that's been really eye-opening. And just this sense of like, you're never really done. I thought when we passed the bond, it would be like, whew, we never have to worry about funding again. Or, there's all these little milestones and each one feels like a big celebration. And then a few months later, you kind of realize, oh, there's a little more work to be done here. Just good and bad. Yeah.
Thanks, Dana.
So Dana really hit the nail on the head, and a point I like to really emphasize to folks all the time is that applying for grants, securing funding is not the hard part. The hard part is spending the money. And I think it's something that so often goes overlooked, especially when it comes to grants. Once folks have a successful application, they've secured that money, they think the hard part's done. And grant administration can be extremely difficult, and all of those construction challenges that Lisa and Dana spoke to, all of those come with paperwork for your funding sources. And just like you pay interest on a loan, every grant you get, every grant award you get comes with administrative costs, and a lot of people don't budget for that. And grants can get expensive. And again, that's just one thing that again and again I see folks overlook as they're planning their project and as they're seeking funding. And the folks who need funding most are municipalities, are nonprofits, are the folks who have the least capacity to administer this funding. So that's why organizations like AC/DC exist, to help you with that. But that's, again, just something I always caution folks on. And those are challenges you run into often with grants, but even with financing here in Vermont, we have the ability to use tax increment financing for development. That comes with its own set of challenges in terms of administering. So again, one thing I really caution folks on is, look at the challenges and the time involved in applying for funding, but also consider how you're going to manage that money after you get it.
Absolutely true. Another, we also found a challenge with timing. Timing is always delicate, but some of these grants come with requirements that you don't even know about until you're into it. We found that something called NEPA, the National...
Oh, NEPA, four-letter word.
That's the National Environmental Policy Act. That is very strenuous, especially with the historic building. So all kinds of agencies had to get involved. That was a requirement to get our final grant agreement in the first case. But it did set the project back a year. We had to stand back and say, okay, we're not going to get started in 2023. We need more time, but we also had more time to fundraise. We had more time to communicate. We had more events. We had another season of ticket selling. So we sort of turned it around and said, let's make the best of this. And then we did get the NEPA finally, and everything fell into place. But it wasn't. And then of course we were hit with the tariff situation. But timing is everything. But you push through and carry on.
Thanks, Susan. Okay, so one more question before we go to the audience for a bit. Anytime you develop a big project and you execute a big project, you sit and you look back at it, no matter where you are in the portion of it, and say, wish I had done that differently. I wish I had known that. What I know now, I wish I had known then. How would you react to that, Lisa?
Well, I felt like we had a great fundraising team. So it was mostly Doug Anderson and I making pitches, and we had a small but mighty capital committee who made a lot of connections, and that was really powerful. And there were terrific ambassadors for our project. I think for us, we had a bunch of house parties, as many campaigns do. They were good for awareness raising, but our most effective meetings were when it was the two of us here on site at Town Hall Theater, physically showing the space and talking about the project. So that was probably my biggest takeaway of the campaign, and where we ended up just focusing more energy as the campaign moved on. Yeah, I think that's it.
I don't know if there are things I would say I would have done differently as of yet. Not out of the woods yet. But I wish I had known how much fun fundraising can be. And I wish I'd had more confidence in myself when I started that process. I had not done any fundraising really prior to this job. And I've come to know that I really enjoy it quite a bit. And I also wish I had to do what seemed to me at the time an extraordinary amount of attending public events and public speaking and Rotary Club and Lion Club, and because this is a public project, just trying to go and meet with anyone and everyone, whether they're donors or not, they were voters. And throughout the entire project, we were trying really hard to bring the community along. And at times it felt to me like it was just, I couldn't do it. It was too much time and energy. And I wish I could go back and tell myself, like, it's so worth it. It's so important. It really, I think, was the key to this entire project, that we had dedicated staff and trustees and project team members that were willing to go out and really meet with anyone and everyone that wanted to talk about this project to get their input, because everyone can and should feel ownership over the library. And so that was all time well spent, and I would definitely do it again.
So what I'll speak to is really the importance of timing. And I always tell folks that it may be too early to apply for funding, but it's never too early to start planning for funding. And this, again, is something I see again and again with grants, is a grant application will open and it has a 1-month window to submit an application. And as soon as that program's announced and that application window opens, that's when my phone starts ringing from people asking if I can help them prepare and submit an application in the next 4 weeks. And the reality is that more often than not, if this is the first time they're hearing this program, they're probably not ready to apply and they probably don't have all the information they need. So what I always tell folks is once you have that idea for a project you know you're going to need funding for, even if you don't think you're going to be ready to apply for funding for another year, come meet with me then. And we're going to look at that program, we're going to start planning around that program, so a year from now, when that application window opens, you're going to have an application that's ready to go. So it's really never too early to, again, start planning. The other thing that I think a lot of folks in hindsight wish they could do differently, specifically when it comes to grants, is just building, well, first of all, knowing what resources exist. A lot of times, again, I'll get people who will call me for assistance with an application, and they're like, man, if I just knew this support or this assistance or these resources existed sooner, I would have called you sooner. But also just, and I think everybody on the stage can attest to this, building a team from people who know finance to people who know construction, planning, marketing. And again, you don't have to, pay top dollar for support. There's a lot of resources that exist in the community. Again, from the Chamber to ACDC to our downtown organizations like Better Middlebury Partnership, there's a lot of people here who can help you that you, again, can get cheap. And then the last thing I'll say on that, again, coming back to timing, a lot of grants specifically are structured around planning and implementation, and a lot of people want to go after an implementation grant before they plan a project. Again, even if all you have is an idea, come talk to us. I see Lindsay here today from Acorn. We were really lucky to be able to work with her on a feasibility, on a grant for a feasibility study for future Acorn Food Hub. And now that that feasibility study is done, that's something that they can leverage for additional funding to actually make that food hub happen. But sometimes it takes just stepping back and really looking at where you are in your project and seeing what funding exists for that phase. And again, getting that planning money, spending that, and then putting yourself in a position to be successful and seeking implementation funding.
Wow, all great advice. And I would add the power of volunteers. We put our core team together totally using volunteers, people who had specific expertise, a small core team, but including finance, accounting, construction experience, people that have been through projects before that some of us had not. And I have to say our community has risen to the occasion, and we, so far, we're still learning about the challenges and what we would do differently. Win the lottery, that would be great too, but I confess to buying lottery tickets for the first time ever. You never know. I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I'm going to keep on doing it until that gap closes.
That's a new fundraising tactic. Damn it, I didn't even know that. That's a good one.
I'll leave you on that note.
Nobody in Vermont won, by the way. All right, time for Q&A from you guys out in the audience.
You want to ask the questions off?
Yeah, I'm sure you want. No, they're going to ask the questions, but you can pay if you don't mind. That's super. So, this is your chance to ask questions. Amy's got one back there in the corner.
Thank you. Lisa, this is for you. I saw your video fly through and it was amazing. So it's encouraging to hear that it was also an effective fundraising tool. I have a question about that, and then I'm asking for some clarification around your decision to not do a case statement as well. So the video, did you work with an outside firm to produce that? Was it a huge lift? Was there a lot of cost around it?
So it's a great question. We built a 3D video into our contract, just the visual representation of what it would look like. So Brad Loaf made the video, and then my husband's a filmmaker, so we worked together, and I wrote the narration, and he recorded it, and he cut it. So that's how we did that. It's handy to be related to someone who can do that, has those skills. I'm sorry, was there another?
Around the case statement, so when you said you chose not to do a case statement, did you mean you chose not to do like a printed brochure sort of leave behind product?
Yes, exactly. I think we felt like we were on a roll with our very simple sort of tools that we had built, which were our presentation, essentially a double-sided one-pager that we spent a lot of time thinking about the messaging and the various messages that people would be interested in related to our project, like economic development and doing the homework around that, the expansion of the arts, the expansion of learning and education, and really building that out in a simple way. And we actually did sit down at one point to do a more thorough written presentation of our case, and we felt like we ended up abandoning it. We just felt like we already had people's attention with these other tools, and that we didn't need it. And I know that's not true in every case, but it was true for us.
I appreciate that, thank you.
I'll just add, oh my gosh, that we also had a video. It was for a bond vote, so a little bit different, but it was also in our contract with Reart Company that they would execute it. So it was a relatively easy lift for us.
Thank you.
Hi, I have 2 questions. I think a few of you mentioned a lead gift, and I was just curious to know, without that lead gift in your campaigns, would you have had the leverage to get those other smaller gifts, is the first question.
I think a lead gift is pretty critical to get other people moving and on board. And then I think there is this moment in the beginning where everyone is kind of like, is this really going to happen? How much should I go in on this project? And it really is wonderful if you have that one stakeholder who really believes in what you're doing and is willing to take that risk and seed the campaign. And then I found that people then started participating pretty quickly after that.
Yeah, critical. We would not have reached our goal without our lead gift, our lead donor, and we got so lucky because they gave us an outright lead gift, and then they also gave us $1 million matching gift if we could get $1 million in matching gifts from other major early donors. And so that helped us get pretty far in our campaign pretty quickly. Yeah, it was huge.
Do you want to add it? I can add a little bit on it. In our world of fundraising at the Opera House, we had the seed money from the ladies' rally. And that was to have a group like that who are already passionate and in love with the Opera House and the city and what it stands for. And then they could feel really proud and invested in what was going to go forward, which was just to get the feasibility done. That was all it was going to first pay for. And then once we knew it was feasible, then those folks were already invested, so that was our nice baseline. And then we could take that investment, we take quotes from people that we've talked to keep getting the feasibility kind of like cleaned up, and the architect drawings ready, and all the other good stuff ready. Then we could go forward with a really great, to go back to you, we need case for support that was a PDF, printed, website, the whole 9 yards, to make our case to the big funders. And we already demonstrated that we had the support from the local community, so that triggered a lot. Plus, it was an accessibility grant, which was everyone's paying attention to that, as they should. So that was good.
One thing I'd add too is that we had people who gave early in the campaign, and they said come back to us later, and so we did have to come back. As you heard, our fundraising goal kept shifting and ask for those top off gifts, and a number of people came through a second or even a third time, and that's how we completed our campaign.
Again, ditto, yes.
Ditto.
Yeah.
Also, just curious to know, did you all utilize a consultant to help guide the process? And if so, was it beneficial and necessary?
Yes, the library used CPG Enterprises, Christine Graham, and it was absolutely, and Maid McBride, it was absolutely essential. I could not have done it without them. It was hugely helpful.
We worked briefly with Scott McCardle, who helped us with the structure of our campaign, and I would say the biggest things that I learned from him were, it's kind of the giving pyramid, but it's also sort of, we use it as a tool because Doug and I were sometimes shy to ask for a specific amount. So what we would do is we would push it across the table, and what Scott would tell us is people will find themselves on this chart. They'll get excited, they see people at this level and this level, and they'll sort of wave and say, I think I'm in this level, and that was tremendously helpful, especially when you just weren't really sure where someone was at in terms of what their capacity is, and so that was huge. And then just sort of helping us set up the basic structure of our campaign and how that would work. And also he recommended software called iWave that we used for a short period of time, which was helpful as well. So those are my big takeaways.
Other questions? Come on, guys. Amy has another.
I'll ask another one. I'll be here all day asking you guys questions. I'm curious about naming opportunities. Obviously, Town Hall Theater, I see examples of your naming opportunities. I think they're really tastefully done, by the way, because sometimes that can get out of hand. From all of you, though, I just would like to hear more about how you viewed the naming opportunities, how effective you thought they would, how effective they actually have been for you, and just what your main takeaway is around offering naming opportunities as part of your giving. I'm guessing for you, Lisa, it was part of your giving pyramid, the naming opportunities that you were handing across the table?
Yeah, we had a separate sheet of naming opportunities that we give to folks if they were interested, and it had I think we started mostly with $25,000 and up sort of structured gifts, but then we also had other naming opportunities at other levels that were 10,000 or the bricks, things like that. And I think it varied. I'm sure you've experienced this. Sometimes people, they really want to contribute to a project, but they really don't want their name on it, and they prefer to be anonymous. And others are really excited to have their family's name and that sort of legacy, and it really varied widely. But for a number of people, it was, I think, motivational, and in some cases it did maybe propel someone to go to a higher level of giving than they would have otherwise, especially if they could pledge it out over time, which was a huge part of our conversation always. Was you could give a one-time gift now, or you could basically look at increasing that gift over a 3 to 5 year period.
Thanks.
Catherine?
I was just going to add, we also had a separate giving pyramid and list of naming opportunities, and I found the naming opportunities to be less motivating for our donors. None of our major donors really took advantage of that. What I have found it is surprisingly helpful now that the project is underway. I've had several out-of-state donors reach out and say, I've been looking for a way to commemorate my recently deceased parent, or whatever the situation is. I inherited some, their donor advised fund, and they had a connection to Middlebury. So those were unsolicited gifts, just from having that list of opportunities up on our website that came in late in the game and were really helpful.
So I'm curious, in terms of your naming opportunities, are they structured as a term, or are they in perpetuity? How do you structure those?
In perpetuity.
Same here.
Interesting.
And we have at the Opera House, we're converting the alleyway to a courtyard and selling bricks, and our brochures are over there, please help yourself. There's plenty available. And we made them into tiers, so affordable 125 is the lowest, smallest brick, and then it goes up to 500 from there, or 2,000 if you want an array, that kind of thing. We have benches that are going to be in the alleyway courtyard, and we only have 4 benches available, and 2 already sold, if you will. In terms of naming, like at a hospital for this wing of something, so someone could say, how about that elevator tower can be called after X, Y, or Z, person, and we're not too keen on that right now. It's a community space, the Opera House. It belongs to everybody. If you walk in there and use the space or just go there to be entertained, you are somehow become an owner. Just in some emotional way, I guess, spiritual way. And so all the names that are going to be in the courtyard, which are some clever and cute and warm, heartwarming, they represent the story of this community and of this time when they really felt it was important for a public space like that to have accessibility to everyone, no matter what. And so we look at the fundraising as really a passionate request and an appeal to one's ownership in the community and of this community space more than anything. If we came up with a name for the alleyway or the courtyard, if you will, or the tower, it would probably be something that the community tells us it's going to be named this, and it probably won't be paid for by anybody donating it. It'll just be known as the whatever courtyard in Vergennes, you know? So it'll be organic, I guess.
Thanks, Gerianne. Catherine, you had a question?
Yes, we do. I'm really interested to ask Susan and Gerianne about your passion for events and the kind of money that you raise through events, and whether it feels more like friend-raising rather than fundraising. I'd like you to comment on that, and maybe Lisa as well, because I know you also host events. So, yeah.
You want to give it a shot? Okay. So in terms of events, sponsorship you're talking about, the passion is real and it's deep, and the donors, our sponsors, are even more passionate than I could ever imagine. They are consistent. During COVID, we didn't even know what we were going to put out there, if anything, but they still continued as sponsors for the season. I mean, these are our friends and our neighbors, our community members that really know how to make a difference and make an impact. So we're very lucky that way. We live and breathe the passion of the Vergennes Opera House. I think Amy will agree, as a member of our community, that you can look at anybody on our board of directors and be like, oh, that person over there, I know where they're coming from. They're all about that public space. So that relationship is key. The challenge, and there is one, is how long the sustainability of these very, very dedicated sponsors. I've been doing this for a long time, 13 or some odd years with Susan, and I did it before, and they're the same people, okay? I'm not younger, and neither are they. And so we have to figure out a way to bring up the next round of passion and donors and sponsors in that way. So that's something to keep in mind, and we're always looking at that.
You have something? I was just going to say, back to the famous ladies rally that we had yesterday, the entry fees only produced a fraction of the total, because everybody then went out as individual cars and got their friends and family to sponsor. So that, using that leverage, with our encouragement, with our nagging, we ended up with a $25,000 day, which would only have been about $5,000 if we had just said, all right, everybody pay your fees, let's go. So there's a lot of that involved.
I think most of our events were essentially to celebrate and share the campaign. So we had an event specifically after Middlebury College pledged the gift and invited a bunch of college-affiliated folks to celebrate that. We had a business-focused gathering as well, mostly to share information. We had a public meeting. I think it was most of our bigger events had to do with spreading the word and building momentum and hopefully excitement.
Yes.
As an organization that is solely focused on raising funds for programmatic areas and closing funding gaps and creating sustainability, I'm just curious about, it sounds like this is really bricks and mortar focused, all of you. Wondering what the portion of your campaigns were in terms of programmatic, and was there an affinity or pull to the bricks and mortar over the programmatic components when you were talking to donors?
That's such a good question because, yeah, I mean, we're asking money for the building, for the capital project, but the whole point of the project is that it's allowing us to create these spaces, which will in turn allow us to run all these new programs, create all these new community spaces. And so in my conversations with donors, we definitely spent a lot of time talking about what will this gift make possible, not in terms of the actual physical space it's creating, but in terms of, you know, what can kids do in this space? What community events can take place? We talked a lot about the programmatic aspect, and I think that is what really connected with the donors the most.
Without the bricks and mortar, do you think you could have had the same success?
No. No.
Sorry.
Definitely not.
Can I add on to that? We're different, of course. We're an event space, a public space, and we don't separate them out, right? It's kind of what you're saying. The programming and the bricks and mortar are so connected. We're a historic building. It's an old house. We just have to keep raising money. We don't have any overhead. We create the event. So forget the project for a second. The All Access project. Make pretend it doesn't exist. We've been doing this for over 30 some odd years as volunteers to make sure something's going on in that space. Why? Not just because we love the arts, which we do, and not just because we love the community, which we do, but it's because it's an economic driver, period. It brings people to the downtown. And when it brings people to the downtown of Vergennes, they see what we have to offer. They come back, they go to the restaurants, they'll go shopping. Suddenly Vergennes is different. When I first came to Vergennes, 30 some odd years ago, it wasn't what you see now. And there are a lot of young professionals who moved to Vergennes who do not know what Vergennes looked like in the 1980s and 90s. They have no idea. They thought this just appeared. But it appeared because many people, like Susan and I, and Amy and other folks.
I came back after y'all did it. It was nice.
But put a lot of time into the mission of what we all do with our expertise to feed back into our community. In my case, it happened to be the arts, right? And Amy, she was in the partnership before she went to the hospital, the Vergennes partnership. So that was economic. So we're all, it was always connected. But people buy the story and the why of it. And it's their community too, and they want it to be awesome. And so, it goes back to European times. When you have a community space, an arts center, you will have a vibrant community, period. There's no wobble there. It's just, it happens. So people bought into that years ago when we reopened the Opera House in its initial restoration. And it's that formula has continued to work. So the programming and the building, they go together. You gotta keep one healthy and the other one too.
Yeah, I would say that people got obviously excited about what the new spaces would create in terms of programming, but now that our capital campaign is wrapped up, I am very much focused on underwriting for specific programming and even things like scholarship for our expanded education programming, which now encompasses far more adult programming as well as kids programming. And with more programming, there's more need. And similarly, specific types of events we have, I'm doing much more targeted fundraising and sort of to help underwrite, because as everyone probably knows, ticket sales don't really do it, don't really cover it. So that's where my focus is now.
I'll just add on to my very eloquent answer of no when you asked me. I realized I should clarify, the library doesn't have a history of fundraising for our programs since we are a municipal library. Our entire budget comes from the town. So I do not think Middlebury residents would be in the habit of making large one-time donations to support something that they see is already being funded through their ongoing taxes.
Yeah. Thank you.
I will just add that, well, programmatic grants are maybe a little more competitive or harder to come by. They do exist. We actually are administering a programmatic grant with the chamber right now, as well as another one focused on workforce development. So those opportunities are out there, and we are excited to help you find them.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry. I can't. Thanks for sharing your expertise and experiences here too. Thinking of preparing for a capital campaign and kind of getting the house in order, did you find any successes, particularly with keeping momentum going, say with board or directors, making sure that everyone's kind of on the same page, ready to really push forward? And how do you sustain that throughout the campaign?
It's a good one. When Susan and I got involved in the Opera House again, I got involved saying I'll do it for 6 months, and that was in 2013. I failed. Going back to the passion again, you surround yourself with a board of folks who really buy into and understand the mission and the vision and the values and the culture of what we're doing and the why of it. And we have people coming and going, through the years. But when we decided to go forward with the All Access project, we had a really strong board. We still, same board. I think maybe one person had to jump off and one person came on, but pretty much the same group of people. I will tell you that when you have a project for people to sink their teeth into, and they know where you're going to, where you are today, where you want to get to, and they can see it clearly, they'll stay with you. How to get there becomes so clear, and the successes feel like they own it, and you just don't want to miss out on anything that's going to happen after that. So I think we have a really strong board. I know we have a very strong core team that's kind of holding the weight of this project right now, but the board steps in. And in the programming side of things, because we're still raising money, but we still want to have a season, we're doing an offstage series of shows, like in different areas in Vergennes for the next several months until we get back into the space. And the board members are all stepping in to kind of help with that. So everybody has like their specialty or whatever passionate for them that they do on the board. Those things haven't changed just because we have the project going. We still need to get other things done. So, yeah.
I would just add that you need a compelling story. You need a recognized need, which was a great help to us throughout our grant writing, because nobody can argue with the fact that a building has to be accessible.
Yeah.
And we all have the stories of, when we stand in the upstairs lobby of the Opera House, if you are familiar, those stairs going up, people get to the top, they're out of breath, where's the elevator? When are you going to get an elevator? So we had a very recognized need and a compelling story. We had a great board team and the town, the support, because you're going to need permits. You're going to need resolutions. You're going to be going to the town council because the grant wants something approved many times approved by the city council. We even had to go to the voters to approve an easement that was required. And all of that was smooth sailing because the town was absolutely 100% behind us and had confidence in our team that we would get it done with their support.
For us, I think preparing for the capital campaign was less about preparing the many volunteers and elected officials that have been involved in this project, as it was preparing the library internally and our staff. We have the library trustees, the select board, friends of the library, and also the Ilsley 100 project team. And so it was important that they all could tell the same story and understand their respective roles in the project, but they really didn't do any of the actual fundraising. That fell to myself and two other volunteers that worked with me on the capital campaign. So for us, it took 2 years, I would say, working slowly over time, not intensively, but a few years working with with CPG Enterprises to set up donor management software, to start telling our story really intentionally through, op-eds in the Addison Independent, and really beefing up our annual report, and doing all that stuff to put us in a position so that we could even do a feasibility study. So it was a lot of like internal auditing and working on that sort of thing.
I think, we also had kind of a small team doing the actual fundraising piece of it, but we do have an incredible board who was behind us and a lot of friends who were excited about it and talking the project up in the community. That made a huge difference. With that said, there were a couple of lulls in our campaign where suddenly it would feel like we were on a roll, and then it would feel like we were never going to raise another dime and we were done. And I can't even explain why, and all of a sudden it would shift and it would start rolling again. And I don't know if anyone else has had that experience,
Yeah,
but
we're over here going, oh yeah.
yeah, but it's so just to be prepared for that there is sort of an ebb and flow in this process, no matter what you're doing, I think.
How was it having oh, sorry. That's okay.
I'm so happy to hear about these projects, and I've watched all three of them with great joy over the last few years. My question is really more for Alex and Phil. I'm going to put you on the spot, guys. Is donor fatigue a real thing, and are we there yet in Addison County? Are we approaching it? How do we feel about that?
I'll be honest, I haven't been here long enough to speak to any potential donor fatigue, and
Good
and
reflection there.
I would bet the people to my left and my right could probably speak to that more so than I can. But it is a great question.
Yeah, we live in a small community, and I think there is donor fatigue at some level. We've got nonprofits here that do annual campaigns. We sell sponsorships for things all over the place, but it's a matter of, to these guys speaking today in terms of managing your campaign appropriately, and sometimes you got to be the first one to the table for certain dollars that are available, because they're not infinite. That's for sure. In Addison County, it's not New York City we're talking about here.
On a more hopeful note, I agree with everything Phil is saying, and our fundraising consultants would also remind us that a rising tide raises all boats, and donors can be inspired by each other. And I would say right now there's just a tremendous amount of energy and excitement in Middlebury. Town Hall Theater is done. At the other end of Main Street, the library's going up. Across Addison County, we have all these fantastic historic projects going. So I think it's possible that even though there's donor fatigue, there's also excitement and a continued willingness to invest in communities that are seen as really benefiting from decades of work that other nonprofits have done to continue feeding on that. I hope, fingers crossed, for everyone.
Yeah, I felt that way too, and I feel like the fact that all of us are here and have had success with these efforts, and others are having success with their campaigns too, shows that there is a lot of generosity in our small community. And I also found that there were people that I met through this campaign, who stepped up to help, who might have just moved to the area or have just been under the radar for a long time. And I just think it really does all come back to that storytelling component and connecting with people, having them feel excited and passionate about what you're doing.
And don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah.
We've had some beautiful surprises that came out of nowhere, just from random discussions. So don't be afraid. Go for it.
Oh, and have a teammate that you can be honest with when you do feel not just donor fatigue is happening, but your own personal fatigue. So we have each other, and you probably have, you have a great team, and I'm not sure who you have. You're probably leaning on everybody. Yeah.
Joe McVeigh, for anyone that knows him, has been a huge part of this project and someone that I lean on hugely.
Yeah, so it's real. It's okay. The goal is still valuable, right? It has a lot, people still want to be part of it, but there are nuances and things that you can't control happening all around the thing you're still going for, right? So it's okay. We have the phone a friend, it's good.
I have a follow-up to something Lisa and Dana talked about. when you have to go back to a donor because you realized a shortfall, you guys talked a little bit about it, but I bet you everybody would love to hear, what's that discussion exactly like? How do you craft?
I'd like to hear that. Go ahead.
Well, I'll say that in the final phase of our fundraising, what we did was we decided that we needed, I think it was 10 gifts of $25,000. So we went back to people and we said, would you be a part of this group that's gonna get us to the finish line? And that worked. And in some cases, some people would say, I'm in for 50. And, but it's great.
Lisa, wouldn't you also say that some of these folks tend to be experienced philanthropists?
Yes.
These are people who are used to giving major donations. They understand the process. They probably have more experience with it than we have as fundraisers.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And I feel like in most cases, there was an anticipation that we were going to come back and ask, which is interesting. And one donor made a joke to me about they waited a long enough time to get back to me so that the gap would get slimmer. And so there's a lot of savvy donors out there, you're right.
Yeah, I think it was made easier by the fact that, like you said, philanthropists that have had experience more than I have being on their side of the table, and they had made it really easy for me earlier on, saying, we're obviously invested in this, and if we need to talk in the future, you can always come back to talk. So I definitely felt a little bit like hat in hand, like here I come, I gotta ask you again, but they were just extremely, extremely gracious.
A tip that I got during the campaign from a philanthropist was not to be afraid to be bold with asks, because you're not going to offend the person. If anything, they will feel flattered that you're asking. You think that they have that kind of capacity. So I tried to remember that at times when I was feeling shy.
We had a question over here.
Yeah, so I've heard you all talk a little bit of like pre-work and things like that. So if you could say like, what is the number one thing you would say is the most important thing we could do like before we launched a capital campaign, what would it be?
Other than a feasibility study, because I feel like feasibility study is the most important. It was the most important thing for us. I don't know if you consider that a part of the capital campaign or not, but I've never been a part of a capital campaign before, and I was just blown away at how critical that was, not just to getting the number that we were hoping to reach, but it was the entry point for me to connect with many of these future donors that I'd never met before. It was like a very organic way to reach out and make a first contact with local philanthropists that I didn't know, and I wasn't asking for money. I was saying, hey, we know you know the philanthropic community, would you be willing to participate in this feasibility study? And it allowed me to get to know them as people before I subsequently went to them and asked for money.
Yeah, I would say that it's connecting with your audience as fast as you can, as early as you can. So, for instance, we knew it was in our strategic plan in 2021 that by 2025 we would be accessible. That was a goal. But we needed to get people into that. So we did a survey. We surveyed our community. We asked them, what are the things you want to see in the Opera House? What are the things you have seen? You have any ideas of what's important to you? And that act got people already invested. We didn't ask them for a nickel, but we had to tell the story on the way, because we're doing this thing, we're going to be doing this project. Oh, that's interesting. We just still didn't ask them for a nickel, but we asked them for their opinion, we asked them for their ideas, we asked them to get engaged in that way. And so that by the time we came through with the fundraising thing, remember this thing we talked about? We're doing it now. And here's how you can help. Here's the start. Everything, we always ask for money, for the end of the year, like most people do, but we targeted for this all-access project. So people already were gonna give as they normally would, but now it's just this little extra, right? And we asked them, can you give a little extra, because it's for this thing. And then that was what we raised money to do the feasibility, to match up more with the feasibility stuff, so we can get the architect drawings ready. And now we're showing people pictures. And when you show people what it's gonna look like, that's another level of people getting invested in. Now they can start to see and dream that it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think our early conversations, we just learned a lot by having casual conversations with a wide range of people and getting their feedback. And through that, there was buy-in that was built into the project. And then I think refining your message, really just thinking about the messages of it, the need, and what is going to compel people to be interested in your project, and fine-tuning that.
You know, I know I'm not on the panel, I'm the moderator, but I just throw my 2 cents in here. Personal relationships are so important. And for all of the nonprofits that are here, you have boards of trustees or boards of directors who have relationships that they can work through for you. As an example, I'm on the board of trustees at the Rotary Museum, and we just received $1 million gift from a single donor that, you know, was cultivated over a period of months and years. And in this environment as well, personal relationships are so important, and you just can't pick up the phone or send out an email and say, you know, would you please give me $50,000? Would you please give me $25,000? People want to know you. They want to know, obviously, about your organization.
And just that person who gave you the money, which I won't say, because they're an anonymous donor to the Vergennes Opera House of $100,000. They just gave us, because they were winding down their foundation. Why? Well, her husband grew up in Vergennes, was on the city council many, many years ago, and in his honor, she wanted to donate to the Opera House. She had his funeral service at the Opera House 2 years ago. The people who came to the funeral service had a hard time getting up there. They were all elderly, in their 80s. And she's like, "When you guys need an elevator." Well, funny, you should ask. So one of our board members who was facilitating that rental told this person all about our project and cultivated that relationship. We already knew of this person who had already given money years ago to restore Grand Drake. So, you know, you're always fundraising, everybody's always a donor. And if you're doing it right, they're always a friend of your organization and your cause. So that was a nice gift. I wish we had the extra 0, but that was a nice gift.
I think you guys may have all touched on the answer to this question, but was there specifically an unexpected fundraising tool or connection that you found in your process?
Susan. She's my tool.
Or resource?
Actually, Susan you did an incredible, I'm not kidding, she did research of all of the places where you can get grants from, and made a spreadsheet that is so incredible. She should sell it. You actually gave it to the Arts Council to share out, because she's incredible. That resource, having someplace to just look, where you see who you need to contact, what their specialty is in terms of the grant that they're going to fund or whatever, the terms that they have, which are formidable and never the same, never ever. Any timelines that they have, that was huge. And there are some of you might already have been recipients of this information through the other avenues, because it was a real gift to fundraising in Vermont.
This isn't necessarily a tool per se, but what ended up working the best for me was just one-on-one meetings with prospective donors, showing up and trying to just be my authentic self, just trusting that me being a genuine person and an advocate for my institution would be enough. And it often was. And then this isn't a tool either, but one other thing to keep in mind is that there are lots of different donations that can be helpful at different times in the campaign. We haven't really talked about in-kind donations, but they've been transformational for my project. The National Bank of Middlebury donated a space for us to set up our mini library, and that was huge, not just in terms of the financial savings it gave us, but just the ability to keep operating. And then Vermont Industrial Parks LLC donated our storage space in Vergennes, and that was also just like, forget about just the amount of money we saved not having to pay for storage space. there are very few spaces big enough that would have worked. So it's not a tool, but just keeping in mind that it can be surprising what different people or corporations have to offer.
For us, personal conversations too were the key, but I think what we realized through the process, I talked a little bit about that video, but we started with a model, then we tried a sort of exhibit in the Jackson Gallery downstairs with printouts of the different spaces. And it honestly wasn't until we put out that video that a number of people said, I didn't understand until I saw the three-dimensional rendering of how this was all going to come together. I couldn't piece it together looking at these independent images downstairs or even looking at the model. So I think that's just part of it, is sometimes it takes that strong of a visual representation for people to actually fully understand, if it's something like a building project, what you're looking to do.
You mentioned the one-on-one conversations. What was your most successful approach in getting those meetings set up? And in most cases, did the prospective donor know that your conversations was going to include an ask, or was it more like it's an initial conversation just to talk about the project and then another outreach to set up a fundraising conversation?
In our case, so often our capital campaign committee members we had a sort of crafted letter of introduction about, that was usually put in an email, or sometimes there was a phone call, explaining what we were doing, telling them that we are actively fundraising, that we would like to invite them in for a pitch. So I think there was an understanding that there was going to be an ask, whether in that meeting or as a follow-up. And I don't think anyone was sort of surprised by that, and that process worked well for us.
Yeah, I would never ask for a gift if I hadn't made it extremely clear ahead of time that that's what I was going to do. I think the language I used when trying to set up meetings like that was something along the lines of, I'd love to be able to meet with you and discuss your potential support. And I would usually offer, I'm happy to come to your home, happy to meet with you at the library or any other public place that you're comfortable. But they always knew, which makes it so much easier on you. Because when you're showing up at someone's home, you're like, they wouldn't have invited, they're not going to say no. I mean, they might not say yes to what I'm asking for, or it might not be yes today, but no one's going to have you go out of your way just to say no after you put yourself out there, so.
We also had a few folks and we still have a few on our list to go to their homes personally, but I would encourage you to go to someone that's your friendliest one, and say we're going out for this big deal, this big pitch or whatever, we're gonna have this big project. And we wanna come, this is what I did to one of them. We wanna come and speak to you about you having a significant impact on this project. And I'll have a case for support with me, etc. But I kind of want to use you as my guinea pig, because this is going to be what I'm going to do when I go forward. And also ask you if you have anybody else we should go to talk with. And that really helped, because we had a friendly folks across the way. We knew they were going to give us something. They felt respected because we asked them, and honored because we asked them. And they really gave me great feedback, to then fine tune and improve the next pitch and the next pitch. So, or somebody friendly.
Any other questions? Yes.
Can you speak to how much business support you got? Can you hear me? Because I know it sounds like mostly we're talking about individual donors, private donors, and grants. So I was wondering if you could speak to local businesses and what percentage, if any, it was.
Yes. We received a few $100,000 in local business and organization support. And then if you include in-kind, more than that. So we had quite a few in-kind contributions and discounts from both our Red Loaf and our gardening service and the person who made the blinds and all kinds of, and that helped a ton with our budget as well.
For us, it was less impactful from the business community, other than the organizations I've already mentioned that made in-kind donations. Vermont Bookshop really stepped up and supported us, but we didn't go out of our way to fundraise from the local business community, and it was a smaller percentage for us.
Yeah, us as well, but the businesses definitely stepped up when we needed letters of support. They were totally appreciated the project and what it would do for the town. So we had more letters than we could put in an application, which was very helpful. And in kind as well, we have enjoyed support of in-kind donors.
Other questions? I think we're going pretty well on time. We started a little early, so I think what we're going to do is ask each of you just to make some closing remarks, and also if you have things that are going on with your individual organizations that you'd like to tell the audience about, we're going to let you do that, and then Alex, and you and I can close it up. So Lisa, we'll start with you.
Great. Thank you everyone for being here today. And if you have any other questions, I'm always happy to answer them. My email is lisa@townhalltheater.org. Pretty simple. Also always happy to meet or walk people around. As far as what's up next at Town Hall Theater, we have, I can't help but promote things, so it's built in. But tonight we have Harry Bliss, who's a New Yorker cartoonist, coming, and it's a free event with the Vermont Bookshop. Tomorrow night we have The Moth. It's a storytelling series that's on National Public Radio, Vermont Public. You could stand up here and tell a story and be on the radio. And then this Saturday we have a big party called A Toast to the Arts that's going to be a pop-up gallery with 20 acclaimed artists from Vermont, 70 pieces of art, all media you can imagine, from pottery and jewelry to painting, etc., textiles. So check that out. Go to townhalltheater.org for all those details.
I'll start off just by giving a little more background to my answer about the businesses. Part of why we decided not to really go after them is because we felt like they have given so much to the library over the years. They have dealt with the Downtown Bridge project, and we just kind of felt like we couldn't return and hit them again. They already support the library in so many ways. In terms of wrapping up, the project is ongoing, as you've all seen. The whole summer, it's sort of been underground work, working on the foundation, the utilities, all that stuff. But next week, the steel arrives, and we're going to start going vertical. So all of a sudden, it's going to look very real, very fast. We're going to be able to see the shape of our new building. And I can't really believe this, but by November, it should be dried in, which to my understanding means walls and a roof. So somehow in the next 12 weeks or so, we're going to see a lot of progress. We do need a new roof. We are actively fundraising again. So that is also ongoing. Talk to me if you want to talk about your potential support. And please visit us at Mini Ilsley. We absolutely love the space. It's amazing. People are really enjoying having all the generations in one room. It just brings a lot of energy. And we're doing, I would say, about 75% of the business that we used to do at the old building. So about 75% of the foot traffic and book checkouts and programs and stuff like that. So small but mighty for the time being.
We love you guys too.
Well, we're very much in the initial phases, but we've got a lot of drilling going on, a lot of noise around town. I was just going to say, in terms of surprises, the depth and strength of the ledge in Addison County is amazing. But we've also had some good surprises from our grantors. One big grant we thought was going to be 100% match turned out to be 0 match. That was a great surprise. We thought we were going to be subject to the Buy America rules and regulations, found out we weren't. So, there are good surprises hiding behind the ledge as well.
Hiding behind the ledge.
Yeah, I wrote ledge as my first thing. Gold dang ledge. Yes, we're hard-headed in Vergennes, and we're proud of it. One of the things that we're doing is the offstage series, which I talked about. And that on October 4th, we're going to have our first event, which is at Rocker's Pizza. It's the Will Patton Ensemble. All of our offstage events are free except for one. That'll be the Broadway Direct in December. And the benefit of having the offstage is obviously we're still bringing people into the downtown. Our mission is to have, part of our mission is to have events in the off-season in Vergennes. So we want to bring, build the economy in Vergennes when it's typically a slower time, you know, and we also are all volunteers, and we love the summer and the fall, and we don't want to be busy either. We kind of want to have our fun, and we don't want to compete against the wonderful things that are already happening with regular businesses trying to make a living and do what they need to do with events in the summer, etc. So our offstage is going to be really fun, and our sponsors, of course, are making all that happen and available. We're selling the bricks, as I mentioned, but I wanted to just say how lucky is Addison County? We have a performing arts center in Addison County. I mean, that's amazing. This little tiny place in Vermont, right, with the Middlebury Town Hall Theater. I mean, that's incredible. The Ilsley Library is a phenomenal story, and what it does for the community down here is fantastic. Little old Vergennes up there with our grit and determination and tenacity, we make that downtown sing and invite people every day, and people feel like they're part of the community, whether they're visiting for a minute or for a lifetime or telling others about the space. So I think we have all of these wonderful stories throughout Addison County, and mostly always told through the nonprofit sector. So what we all do, what you all do, whether you're volunteers or you're paid, is impactful and important, and it's worth it. It's all worth it.
I think we should give these folks a hand.
So I'm going to share some ACDC announcements, but first I just want to elaborate on what Gerianne said about all the great stories here in Addison County, and really highlight the fact that funding agencies see that, and when your community has a track record of poor success implementing grants, funding agencies pick up on that. When your community has a history of great success implementing grants, funding agencies see that. So every time we have a successful project here in Addison County, like the 3 that we see up here today, that helps a different project be successful in the future. So really, again, just wanted to highlight the impact that those projects have on really establishing Addison County and the people here is having the capacity and the ability to spend money wisely, especially when it comes to public funds through grants. And I think that same case could probably be made for philanthropic fundraising. So really, I think the projects we will see in the future definitely owe some debt to the projects that have been successful today. The other thing I wanted to share real quickly that is a very timely announcement for today's talk is that ACDC is currently soliciting projects for the 2026 Regional Project Priority List. So every year, ACDC compiles a list of 10 priority projects for Addison County. So we have a project information sheet on our website that you can fill out and submit to us. Those projects go through a scoring process and then are ranked based on their scoring. The top 10 go into the RPP. That RPP is then submitted to the Agency of Commerce and Community Development of the state and shared with Northern Borders Regional Commission. So NBRC, which is a very prominent grant program, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and upstate New York, and I believe the Opera House got an NBRC grant. Otter Creek Child Care Center for their expansion. Unfortunately, Linda couldn't be here today, but they got an NBRC grant. In order to get NBRC funding, you pretty much have to be on the RPP. So any folks who are planning a large capital project and will be seeking funding the next year, I'd really, really strongly encourage you to visit our website and to complete that project information form and submit that to us. And the last thing I'll say is ACDC is here to support you in your planning and fundraising for your capital projects. So please don't hesitate to call us, to reach out. I always say we're like the economic development muscle of Addison County. And if you don't work us out, we'll atrophy. So please, I am sitting there waiting for a call to help you out. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, just closing up, our next educational webinar, which is going to be online and is sponsored by the National Bank of Middlebury, is on cash flow projections and analysis. That's on November 11th, Tuesday at 9:30 in the morning. So I know I need help with cash flow, so I'll be there for sure. And then just a couple of things for the chamber. If you're out and about, 2 weeks from Saturdays, the 23rd Annual Bristol Harvest Festival, which we sponsor. On October 12th, with Better Middlebury Partnership, it'll be the 4th Annual Car Show and Fall Festival right here in Middlebury. And our annual awards dinner and Hall of Fame induction is October 23rd, right here at Town Hall Theater, so we're looking forward to that. All of the winners are going to be announced actually tomorrow, so keep an eye on some communications. And to Alex's point, anybody who needs help, particularly in promotion of your capital campaigns going forward, reach out to us. That's what we're here for. We will help you market that and get the word out. So thanks for being here. Thanks to Community Bank for sponsoring this. Who got us lunch again? I forgot already. Grapevine Grill got us lunch. And so if you didn't eat, bring some with you, and look forward to seeing you again.